Did I make friends in prison? Yes. One of the most important things when you're a skinny, nerdy guy like me who can't fight very well is to make some friends in prison as quickly as possible so you don't get smashed. So when you go in, everything you think about in your normal everyday life, what I'm going to have for dinner, what I'm going to meet my girlfriend, all that kind of stuff is out the window. You're hearing human heads getting bashed against toilets, bodies getting thrown around, seeing people getting carried around on stretchers look like they're dead. And it just becomes raw survival of the fittest. So your brain then starts thinking, who can help me, who can harm me? And over time, I managed to get in the good graces of a guy called Two Tonys. He was a mafia mass murderer who left the dead bodies of rival gangsters from Arizona to Alaska. He was doing 141 years. If you've only murdered rival gangsters, you're at top of the respect in the prison. If you've murdered a woman or a child, it's KOS, kill on sight. The prisons try and kill those guys when they come in. And I ended up, Two Tonys, he had me write his life story. I became his official biographer. So once he started to protect me, I never got smashed again after that. And before that, because so many people were arrested with me, there was a lot of my friends actually in there naturally with me. But if I'd have gone in without my friends, heaven help me, I would have been annihilated by these gang members because look at the size of me compared to these guys. Yeah, so making alliances is very important. Yeah. Okay, next question, please. Yeah.
What do you think the answer is to stop it?
To stop what?
To stop, because like the gang culture in prisons, like what can the guards do?
What can the guards do to stop the gang culture in prisons? Never ever been asked that before. It's a really good question. What they tried to do was, in Arizona, because the gang members were wearing tattoos showing that they'd killed multiple people and who the gang heads were, because they had tattoos and they had brought experts in the tattoos in and identified the lead gang members. So they put all the gang members, they rounded them all up and put them in the super maximum security prison. But what that meant was, then the gang controlled the other yards by sending letters called kites that they wrote, and the trustees, prisoners who work in the prison system, would transfer those letters throughout the prison system to the yards. And the Aryan Brotherhood prison gang, which is a product of the US prison system, it was started in California, that now is one of the number one, is a leading cause of murder throughout the entire of America. So it's just got worse and worse and worse every year. Nothing they've tried has been able to stop it, and I personally, I don't know how they can stop it. You know, and I see it as this: if you treat people like animals, they're gonna get out and behave like animals, and it's like a reaction to the action of, we are so tough on crime, we are so hardcore, we're gonna really make these people suffer. But then when they get out and they're our neighbours and we want them to behave themselves, they don't behave themselves because they've been maladjusted to this violent society in prison. So I think if you look at the Scandinavians, they don't have a big problem with the Aryan Brotherhood prison gang. And they've got the lowest crime and reoffending in the world. So I think the solution would be to look at the more humanitarian approach of the Scandinavians, but there's something deep-rooted in the human psyche that feels prisoners lock them up and throw away the key. And that's because the media, all they put out is prisoners, paedophiles, serial killers. They don't say it's all non-violent drug offenders mostly getting arrested, and it's mostly young people getting arrested for weed that are making up the vast majority of arrests. They never put that out at all. So the public naturally hate prisoners until they get a call from their kid who's been busted. Yeah. All right, next question, please. Yes?
Did you do Aryan Brotherhood came up to you?
When the Aryan Brotherhood came up to me and asked me what my charges were,
Yeah, did you tell them and did they want you to join?
in my Banged Up Abroad episode, it shows the gang coming up to me and asking me what my charges are. And I'm making the situation worse because I'm fresh, I'm what's called a fish, and I don't know the gang slang. And they're like, what are your charges, what are your charges? And my charges are on a little printout from the jail, but it's all stuff I don't understand because it's legal terminology. Crime, syndicate, conspiracy. I'm like, what is it? What have I done? I don't know what, I knew what I'd been running next to me, but what are they actually saying here? I said to the gang, I don't know, I don't understand my charges. They're like, what do you mean you don't understand your charges? Are you a chomo? I don't know what a chomo is either. Chomo's child molester. So I'm basically digging my own grave because I don't know how to relate to the gang. They've got me up against the wall, about to smash me. But what the Bang the Broad episode didn't show was I had my little charge sheet in my pocket and I pulled it out and I showed them the charge sheet. And when they saw I was in for drug crimes, which most people are, so that's acceptable. And then they saw my bail was $750,000 cash only. And then that got some respect with them because it was so big, and they left me alone after that. And the other reason that I didn't have to join a gang was because so many people were arrested with me, including some of my bouncers, big guys, in the remand jail. We were one of the biggest groups in the jail. So we were all looking out for each other, and the gang, we have to play along with it, but I didn't have to join. I mean, to join anyway, you have to commit acts of violence or murder people. And I was just trying to stay in my cell, reading and writing, and turn it into an educational opportunity. And in just under 6 years, I read over 1,000 books. I read a lot of the original texts in philosophy and psychology, and that enabled me to go deep inside myself as well, and it helped me address the root causes of why I was doing all that misbehaviour. Yeah. Okay, next question, please. Anyone watching Making a Murderer then? Has anyone got any questions about Making a Murderer? Go on.
What are you doing? How are you actually involved?
When I watched Making a Murderer, I mean, it just ripped my heart out just to see the injustice, to see his mum. All those scenes with his mum were just so sad. And I knew there was going to be a massive outpouring of support. And I also knew people would try and send things to these guys. Now, you can't just go out to a shop and buy a present for someone in prison and send it to them, because there's rules and procedures. A lot of people, what they did was they immediately wrote to them in the prison, and they didn't even put their prison number on the envelope because they didn't understand, and the prison sent all those letters back to all those people. So I put videos on the internet explaining how you write to someone in prison, explaining how you can send them books and things you can buy through the inmate store, and explaining all the different things that had to be followed so people could do these things, and they could be supported to the fullest. And I was in contact with some of the Avery family, and we've just been doing loads of videos ever since, really exploring other murder suspects and annihilating all this evidence, supposed evidence that the prosecutor come up with. He said this woman had been brutally murdered, raped, had her throat slashed and shot in the head, and there wasn't a shred of DNA anywhere that wasn't suspect. I mean, that house should have been covered in DNA.
You believe that they planted evidence, like the key?
Yeah, I know how corrupt the justice system is, and people have watched this and they've said, Making a Murderer, this is like, surely this can't be happening anywhere else. This is just one isolate. It's happening all over the country. And again, they get away with it because people don't care about prisoners, and people naturally trust in authority. So that's how they get away with it. And if you look at that good old boys network of police they've got out there, these countrified, it's like highly incestuous. You can see, what kind of level of corruption they've took that to out there. And it's really sad. It's really sad. It's all about money at the end of the day. Money, jobs, reputations, bonuses, votes, political aspirations. Because if you can solve a murder, the public's happy, you get headlines, promotion, and you win a prize. Ken Kratz won a prize. Those detectives who manipulated Brendan Dassey into giving the false testimony, they got prizes for that. Yeah, and it's really sick. It really is. My lawyer, I'll give you an example in Arizona. I mean, the DNA evidence is now showing that hundreds of guys are set up by the police, including on death row. And my lawyer got a guy off death row called Ray Crone, snaggletooth killer. Waitress was killed at a bar. She's been working at a bar, waitress. And Ray had been at the bar. A body was found dead outside of the bar. There was DNA at the scene. There was a bite mark on her leg. Ray had been at the bar. Let's just arrest Ray. Crime solved. Public's happy. We can get our promotions. So they did. They arrested Ray. The DNA didn't match. The bite didn't match. So they suppressed the DNA, and they paid an expert witness $50,000 to get on the stand and say his teeth matched when they knew that they didn't match. They gave Ray $5,000 or $10,000 to defend himself and spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions, prosecuting him. Court is like theatre. I went 26 months every month to court and never got to say a word. The prosecutor puts on her show, my lawyer puts on his show. She said I was the Antichrist. My lawyer said I was, this stock market protege, angelic figure. And I was neither, I was just somewhere in between. But whoever has the most money puts on the best show, and the state put on the best show in Ray's case because they had the most money, so he loses at trial. His mum nearly has a heart attack in the courtroom. He's on death row for almost 10 years. He's in hours of getting executed multiple times. Stay of execution comes in. Can you imagine how that feels to be innocent? I put myself in prison. Can you imagine how that feels to be innocent? Anyway, my lawyer got on the case and he prosecuted through the court system. He forced the state of Arizona to give up the DNA. They did not want to give up the DNA. And when they were forced to give up the DNA, he ran it through a crime lab. It matched someone in the prison system, and that person confessed to the murder. Could have been solved as easy as that. But if you are proven wrong, then you have to pay out compensation, and then your career, which was advanced by this case, then gets looked at and called into question. So they would rather an innocent person get the death penalty than have all their stuff unwind and have to pay out compensation and have their careers and reputations be put on the line. And that's exactly what we're seeing with Making a Murderer. They are committed to him staying in there. They will do everything under the sun to keep them in. We're in the state of Wisconsin justice system. But luckily he's got the Innocence Project back on his case, and he's got a good attorney, this Kathleen Zellner. It's been really proactive, and I think he will get out eventually, because the truth has got to come out eventually with this many people looking at the case. And there's some other good ones on Netflix as well. There's the West Memphis 3 is a similar case, and also the Central Park 5, false witness coerced testimony. And these people weren't even at the crime scene on the timeline. There's actually a guy on the internet, Dave Bagota, I think his name is, saying he saw Stephen Avery at a petrol station at the time he was supposed to be killing Teresa. But it doesn't matter in this Alice in Wonderland justice system. It doesn't matter. You don't even have to be there. You can have witnesses saying you're somewhere else, and there can be no DNA showing that it actually happened. But if you put on the theatre show the best, you're going to win. And basically they won it. The minute they won it was when they took snippets of Brandon Dessie's testimony and took it to the news headlines and did that big press release. And Kratz was sat there, and the minute they did that, even the people who believed him from the 18 years turned against him. All the local people turned against him. Even some of his own family members turned against him, because they didn't understand until Netflix came along and showed how all this testimony was coerced. They didn't understand why Brendan Dassey would say that. They really thought they'd done it. That's how good a job these theatre productions are. They never in their wildest dreams imagined Netflix would come along and this whole thing would unravel. Now all their careers are on the line now, but they're fighting to prevent him getting out. And Ken Kratz, it's come out, the prosecutor, not only was he in a sexting scandal, as it was said on the documentary, there's multiple allegations of him actually physically raping women. So the prosecutor was basically a serial sexual predator. And he's out there doing all these interviews saying Stephen Avery's raped and killed this woman. It's bizarre, it's really bizarre. Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Got anything? Yes?
Just on this, obviously from the USA perspective, do you feel that the UK has the same sort of corruption, or will end up having the same sort of corruption when it goes to privatisation?
When it's in the interest of business to put people in prison, the economic forces become so overwhelming on the politicians and the legislators that the system gets more corrupt. If you've got private prisons contributing tens of millions each year to political parties on both sides, Whoever wins the election keeps those contracts going. Corrections Corporation of America are boasting in their annual report to their shareholders, our profit growth is guaranteed because our reoffending is so high. They're not correcting people, they're breaking them. And they know it, and that's what keeps them in business. Nearly all the people in there have got addiction issues. And what do? Allow it to be completely drug and gang infested mayhem. They don't give these guys any counselling. They don't give them any rehabilitation. They know when they get out, they won't stand a chance. They give them $50 gate money and say, have a nice life. And then they come right back. Yeah. Like I said, Arizona prides itself on having these hard prisons, and they've got, according to FBI statistics, highest crime and reoffending rates in the country. Yeah. Okay, any more questions?
Yeah, I've got one.
Go for it.
Just a quick question. I was wondering, when you was in that Arizona prison there, I was wondering, do you know if any of the cops like donuts? Yeah. Did anyone like donuts?
If I'd have asked the cop, do you like donuts? I probably would have got tasered down.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I watched a lot of American shows like
Yeah.
Sisters of Bam.
I can see where that stereotype comes from.
Yeah.
You see them just kicking back with the newspaper and stuff in their faces, some of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you ask them something like you want help in some way, they just look at you like you're an animal, and how dare you interrupt their meal and newspaper.
Yeah.
But yeah, that cliche, you know, stuff like Prison Break. Any of you guys watch Prison Break? These characters like Teabag exist. You know, I met people like Teabag in there, trying it on with me and stuff like that. And Orange is the New Black. In the women's prisons in Arizona, some of the women formed families, and they'd have a lipstick lesbian would be the mum, butch lesbian would be the dad, and then the young prisoners coming in would be the children. So yeah, these things you do see on TV in the movies, you know, they do actually have a basis in real life. Yeah.
Are you scared of the police now?
No, I'm not scared of the police. I'm not scared of, you know, I've come here and I've exposed the corruption, but there's good and bad in every profession. I'm not trying to tell you guys be afraid of the police. You know, this is happening all over the world. They're all corrupt. There is a high degree of corruption in the justice system that I experienced. And as you see, making a murderer, there's a lot of corruption in that sheriff's office. But there's a lot of well-meaning people working in the police. And hopefully, you know, going across the country and telling my story, young people who are joining the police perhaps have seen my story can help make changes in the system so that it moves away from the corruption and that kind of level of stuff that I've described. That's one of my hopes. You know, I speak at some of these schools that like the politicians' kids go to and stuff like that, and I know they're going to be the decision makers of the future. So I just go out there and tell them, here's what happened to me. And a lot of them, you know, really ask me questions about this kind of stuff, and my hope is that they'll go out and try and move away. Make prisons again. Prisons and the police were started to stop people from hurting each other. Robert Peel out of London started the police with that express purpose. And prisons have become warehouses for people hurting themselves, drug addicts. The drug addicts need to be referred over to mental health. And then you've got the resources for the police to go out and arrest the paedophiles and the murderers and the robbers and the rapists. Since the war on drugs started, the rate at which murders have been solved in America has gone down. Because the police are all their time is taken up with arresting drug offenders. And the people who put the best arguments forward against the war on drugs are the police. And I'm talking about law enforcement against prohibition. If you go on YouTube and put in their videos and watch these policemen describe what they would like to be doing and what they've actually been doing, you know, they say, we joined the police to arrest robbers and stop this and stop that. But all our time is took up arresting non-violent drug offenders. You know, when I was a policeman, I was told we've got all this money and resources to arrest drug offenders, and they said go out and make as many arrests as possible. And we quickly realised the easiest people to arrest were young people smoking weed. So we would go out and infiltrate student groups and arrest all these young people smoking weed. And now I'm ashamed of that. That's what one policeman was saying. I'm ashamed of that. Because I put those young people somewhere where they were introduced to harder drugs, they made criminal connections, and they got out and they became real criminals. And I wanted to be arresting proper robbers and murderers and rapists. And we're being told in this country that they've not even got the resources to investigate these political paedophiles. Yet the whole prison, they just arrested this guy in Wales for growing a pot plant who's got some disease, debilitating disease, and he was growing that to have medicinal marijuana to alleviate his symptoms of his disease. They've got the resources to do that. It's completely upside down. Marijuana was made illegal in 1937 in the Marijuana Tax Act, and they quickly exported that throughout the entire world through the United Nations. And that's why it's illegal in this country today. It got exported from America. And Obama, who was part of what's called the Choom Gang in Hawaii, Choom meant being high on weed. That was his pot-smoking gang. It was called the Choom Gang. Obama has maintained weed as a class 1 drug, as harmful as heroin and more harmful than cocaine. And even though the states have decriminalised, that's come about because people are sick of it and they've demanded the states do it. That's not the federal government. Obama has increased spending on raiding medicinal marijuana facilities, and he's kept all this prison industrial complex stuff in business. And just to give you an example of what these guys said when they were introducing these drug laws, the first drug czar was Dr. Hamilton Wright. He was actually called the Opium Commissioner. And he said, it's been authoritatively stated that cocaine is often the direct incentive to the crime of rape by the Negroes of the South and other regions. And they brought an expert who testified to Congress. Most of the attacks upon the white women of the South are the direct result of a cocaine-crazed Negro brain. Yeah, so it was basically racism that was why these laws were introduced. Harry Anslinger, he was the one behind the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, he said, marijuana can arouse in blacks and Hispanics a state of menacing fury or homicidal attack. During this period, addicts have perpetrated some of the most bizarre and fantastic offences and sex crimes known to police annals. He testified to Congress that coloureds with big lips lure white women with jazz and marijuana. There are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the US. Most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and their entertainers. The satanic music, jazz and swing result from marijuana use. Marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and others. Reefer makes darkies think they're as good as whites. The primary reason to outlaw marijuana is its effect on the degenerate races. That's why marijuana was made legal, to put blacks and Mexicans in prison. And these are the drug laws we've got today. And the people putting the money up for this were the pharmaceutical companies, because they didn't want people growing medicine in their own backyard, as in pot plants. Yeah.
Do you believe in the mental health effects of cannabis?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not an advocate for drugs. I'm an advocate for people staying away from drugs. Here's what people think. If you are for the decriminalisation of drugs, you want everybody out taking drugs. That's not the case at all. But people are locked in that mentality. I want a system whereby people who are taking drugs, which is the reality of life, 2/3 of people in this country experiment with drugs. I want a system whereby they are referred to mental health. They're not sent to a prison where they'll be introduced to heroin, crystal meth. Gangs will come up to them, try and get them to get neo-Nazi tattoos and turn them into real criminals. So until that is enforced, all this stuff is just going to keep getting worse. And the countries around the world that have got the hardest core drug laws have got the biggest drug problems. So the prohibition, it's an absolute disaster, especially for the taxpayers. $2 trillion America spent on the war on drugs. And look what they've got out of it. 2.5 million people in prison, a lot of them drug offenders. And you've got global chaos, such as hundreds of thousands of people getting killed in Mexico, battling for the black market in drugs, which is a function of drugs being illegal. If drugs were made legal, there would be no black market and all the criminals would be out of business. Kids in America are saying it's easier for them to get heroin than it is alcohol, because alcohol is legal and the government regulates it and they can't get it, but the drug gangs will send dealers in schools to sell the kids heroin. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, especially for young people, taking weed, the brain is still developing. It can really cause mental health issues, but you're never going to stop people taking drugs. And I'm for a policy that reduces harm, that accepts the reality of the world and reduces harm. Not for all these predatory corporations just making money off the backs of people. Yeah. Okay, any more questions? Come on, that was too easy. I want a hard question. Anyone got any hard questions? Yeah, go on.
Is there any time when you're in prison that you thought you might have to kill somebody?
When I thought I might have to kill somebody, when I was living with the serial home invader torturer, who was threatening to get me with the padlock in a sock and smash my skull in with, you know, I don't know about killing him, but I had a pen next to me at all times, and I thought if he ever tries anything, I'm just going to get this pen into his eyeball and hope that would put him out of action. So, yeah, I mean, you're thinking anything can happen to you at any time in these places, and you've got to protect yourself. I'm not a naturally violent person, but I'm entertaining these thoughts because if something's going to happen, I'm not just going to let it happen. You know, and there was times when he had his mates in there and they were joking about raping me. And I had to think, what am I going to do if they grab me? I had my pen and I thought, you know, I just grab their eyeballs, or if they did manage to get my pants down or anything like that, I would just grab my own business and rub it in their eyes or something like that to try and stop them. Yeah. So yeah, you do. This is the kind of, when you're in this kind of environment, this is the kind of, it gives you that mentality. And that's why when they get out, the prisoners, it's hard to readjust to the real world, because the rules that apply in here don't apply to everyday life. My mum said I was like a puppy dog falling around the house waiting for orders my first 6 months after my release, because, you know, I had to shake that off. And I saw so much violence, you just become immune to it after 6 months. When I first went in, there was a look of shock on my face, and they would say to me, you've got to get that look of shock off your face, or else you're going to get preyed on. But 6 months in, I've just got dead eyes, where you've seen so much violence, you're just completely immune. And if you show any emotion, then they'll sense that and pick on it. Yeah. So it took me about a year or so before I moved down south and got my career going. Yeah. Was there another hand up? Yep.
How do you keep yourself sane throughout it?
Keeping myself sane. I was blessed to have such good family support. A lot of the people I'd met have been disowned by their families because of repeated involvement in drugs. The reading and writing really helped me, because when you're reading, your mind is in the book. It's not on the environment and all the things that are going on. Yoga and meditation. My sister sent me a book on yoga, and I hid it under my mattress because I didn't want the fellas to think I was a sissy. And she kept on at me, have you tried yoga? Have you tried yoga yet? And I waited till my cellmates were gone. I thought, to get my sister off my back, I'm just going to try it. And I did basic flow of postures, cat, dog, forward bend, side bend. And in the end, I lay down in corpse pose at the end. I felt all the stress and tension just melting out my shoulders. I said to myself, I used to take drugs to feel like that. You can actually do it naturally. And because I've got this energy, then I threw my energy into yoga. And by the end of it, I was doing these very athletic upside down positions out on the rec field. And the prisoners started to ask me to teach them yoga. And I did. I started to teach them. I had my own little yoga class. And meditation as well, mentally. When I got moved in with the cockroaches, they put me on medication because I couldn't sleep with the cockroaches crawling on me. I was seeing imaginary cockroaches, I was hearing voices, and in the end, I started to meditate. I didn't understand meditation. You sit there and you just don't think of anything. What's that about? I couldn't get to grips with it at first. Just being sat there. But in the book it said you count your breathing, or you just focus on your breath and stuff like that. And in the end, I was able to meditate for hours on end, and my thoughts did slow down, and my anxiety went down so much over time that I got off the medication. So meditation's a really valuable tool, especially to let that stress out your system. Yeah. And then the blog, all these people writing to me from all over the world, that restored my faith in humanity. And they would send us books. And there was a Shawshank Redemption moment where I was allowed 7 books. And this big redneck guard, chewing tobacco, reflective aviator sunglasses on, comes over the desert with this cart of books. It's like, Attwood, get your ass down here. So I get down there. He's got this cart of books. He's like, how many books are you allowed in your cell? Like 7. It's like, well, there's 57 goddamn books in here for you, and I can classify them as contraband and destroy them all. But because I know you're sharing them and donating to the library, I'm just gonna look the other way. So I yelled my mates over. My mates come and grab them. It was like a trail of ants across the desert carrying all these books. And it was like Christmas in the cell then, because books are like gold in there. And everyone was just sniffing the books and picking ones and taking them back to the cell and stuff like that. So yeah, reading psychologically, I thought I knew everything, didn't I? I never read before prison except for finance books. And then I got in there and started reading, and I understood I didn't know anything at all and how much there is to learn. And